Hi, in this unit we're going to talk about decisions or conditionals. We'll talk about how to use the if and and keywords, the if else and, followed by the if else if, the else if keyword. Now let's start with the first one, the simplest one, if and and. Now here is the syntax. If Boolean condition. In other words, what you put here has to be a variable or an expression or a Boolean expression, an expression which evaluates to true or false, or a variable which stores true or false, or has to be the value there, true or false. A Boolean condition, you can put a number there, it doesn't make sense. If A equals 3, it's fine, because A equals 3 evaluates to a Boolean value. You can have any number of statements inside here. It is customary to indent, meaning put 2 or 4 spaces for each statement in this. This is what we call the if block. All the statements here will be in an if block, followed by end to signify the end of the if block. Okay, so this is the syntax. I'm going to show an example here. It's a bit difficult to show this in IRB. Okay, you can do that. I can show you. For example, sex equals to m. Okay, I can do something like if sex equals to m. Okay, it's 2 spaces. Puts you need to serve national service n. Okay, once I type end and I hit enter, these 3 statements will run. Okay, so you will check if this is true. Yes, in this case, yes, because I've just stored m in the variable called sex. If this is true, I'll go in to the if block and perform the statement there. It doesn't have to be a puts statement, it can be any other statement. So it says here, puts you need to serve ns, and then you reach the end of the if block. So this gets printed out. The reason is because sex is equivalent to m. But this is a bit difficult because I have to retype the whole thing if I need to show you another example. So I'm going to get out of interactive Ruby, and I've just written a file, a simple file, which contains more or less the same code. Alright, here, so this statement, sex equals to m. If sex is equivalent to m, remember this is a double equal sign, not a single equal sign. This is not assignment operator, this is the comparison operator, the equality operator. I'm checking if this variable stores this value. Alright, so if that's the case, I will run this statement. Okay, in this example, I have 2 statements in the if block. I'll run this statement, and then I'll get out and run this statement. So I'm going to save this as ns.rb. I'm going to run ns.rb, non-interactive way. You see, when the program runs, 3 statements get printed out. Okay, I'm going to trace through. This happens. This happens. I'm going to check. This is true. True. Good. I'll run this statement. I'll run this statement. And then I'll get out of the if block and I'll run this statement. So I have 3 statements being printed out. 3 lines printed out. Now what if sex is f? Let me save this. Let me run it again. Now when sex is f, I run this. I run this. This is false. Now if this is false, I'm going to skip the whole if block. These 2 statements will be skipped. Skip. Now this is what we call a comment, not a hashtag. It's nothing to do with social media. This is what we call a comment. Anything after the hash, the hex sign, anything, all this will be ignored. Okay, it's for human beings like you and me to read. You should start commenting your code if you are, as your code gets longer and longer, right? You should start to comment your code. Otherwise, it gets really difficult to read your code, to understand what you're trying to do. So we put comments all over the place when it's necessary and useful to aid in our understanding. So in this case, this statement will be skipped and this statement will be skipped. Everything in the if block will be skipped. You will jump beyond n and it will print ending program, and that's exactly what happens. Okay, only ending program is printed. You can view this code as, no, there are only 3 statements here. The first statement. The second statement, some people like to view this whole chunk as a second statement, and this is a third statement. So I run the first statement first. I run the second statement. In this case, the second statement doesn't print out anything, doesn't do anything. Okay, the reason is because this is false. And then I'll go to the third statement and print ending program, and the program terminates because there's nothing else to run. Okay, I hope this is a clear example. Now remember, statements in the if block, all the statements put 2 spaces or 4 spaces in front. Okay, this is what we call indentation. Indent your code. Indentation. Now, indentation is not compulsory. It's not really necessary for your code to run. In other words, this will still run. You can save this, this will run. But it's really difficult to read this, right? It's difficult to see which statements are in the if block. So indent your code, 2 or 4 spaces. Now let's move on to if else. Alright, let's move on to if else. So it is possible to include an else here. Okay, so the syntax looks like this. Alright, this is an optional else block. Now there's only one end statement, because this is going to be read as one chunk of code. It's one statement if you want to. It's one statement. So again, I can view this as the first statement, this as the second statement, and this as the third statement. Okay, in my program. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to run this. So let's see if what we see makes sense. Program starts line 1. F is stored in sex, and I go to this if statement. This is false. Now when this is false, the condition is false, I'm going to ignore, I'm going to skip the whole if block, and I will run the else block if there is one. So what's going to happen? This statement will run. It prints out register for university here. Okay, and then it prints out study, and it gets out beyond the end statement and prints ending program. That's why you see 3 statements here. Now on the other hand, if sex is M, let me save this and I run it. I see register for NS, perform your NS ending program. Okay, I'll run this, this happens to be true, so I run this, I'll run this, and I'll ignore the whole else block. This will be ignored. Then I'll come to the last statement and print out ending program. Now in this situation, remember, only one of these blocks, the if block or the else block, one of them will run. Only one. You can't run both. Okay, so in this situation, only this or this will execute, depending on this condition, whether it's true or false. Okay, it's like English. So if you clean up your room, you get ice cream. Else, you get a spanking. So you either get ice cream or you get a spanking. You never get both. Alright? Now, let's move on to the third and last one. How to use else if. Don't ask me why it's not ELSEIF. Someone who came out of this language decided that I do not want the E there. So let's stick to that. Now there is an example here. Okay, before you look at example, let's look at the problem. Now the problem here is that depending on the age, you're trying to enroll a kid to preschool. Depending on the age, he will be placed into one of the following categories. Okay, he may be, if he's below 2, he's rejected. If it's 2 to 4, excluding 4, that means below 4, he'll be in the play group. If it's 4 to 5, he'll be in the nursery. If it's 5 to 6, no, there's a mistake here. If it's 5 to 7, excluding 7, he'll be in kindergarten. And if he's 7 or older, he'll be rejected. He should be in primary school, not in preschool. So in this column shows a more formal representation. Okay, h be smaller than 2. 2 to 4, if h is equals or bigger than 2 and below 4. Alright, so this is a more formal representation which we'll use in our code. I mean, we can't put statements like that in your code, right? Including, excluding, all these are not keywords, no one will understand, except when we speak. So I'm going to convert this into code, which I've just done here. So h equals to something. I'm going to change this value later. Now this whole chunk of code can be viewed as one single statement. Alright, now only one of these blocks, 3, 4, 5. Now there are 5 blocks here. Only one of them will execute. Only one. Okay, and then this is the third statement. You print out your category. Okay, so let's check this. If h is smaller than 2, the category will be stored with the value rejected. Else, if h is bigger or equivalent to and smaller than 4, you'll be in a play group. If it's from 4 to 5, excluding 5, including 4, you'll be in nursery, and so on. If h is bigger or equivalent to 7, you'll be placed into the rejected category. Okay, let's save this and run this program. Ruby temp.rb. Okay, in this case, when program runs, h is set to 100. I'll come to this if statement. This is false, so I'll go to the second if statement. This is false as well. I'll go to the third if statement. False, false, true. I'll go into this block, set cat to rejected, and that's the end. I'll print your category is rejected. That's exactly what happens. Now let's change this to maybe 5. Alright, let me save this, run it. Okay, same thing, I'll go through the whole program. When the program runs, h is 5. I'll evaluate this. This is false, so I'll ignore this. This is false. I'll ignore this. This is false because h is 5. This is false because this is true, but this is false. For true and false gives you false. Remember the AND operator. So I'm going to ignore this block and I'm going to check this. True and true. So both operands are true. True and true gives you true. The whole thing is true here. I'll come into this block and set cat to kindergarten. Now once I enter a block, I'm going to ignore all the remaining blocks. I'm not going to do any more checks. Now this is very important. I'll explain why. I'm going to go beyond the AND keyword and I'll run the third statement, which is your category is kindergarten. And this is exactly what you see being printed out here. Okay, so this works. This solves the problem. Okay, but it is a bit unnecessarily lengthy. Now, let me change the code a bit and I'll tell you that it actually works as well. Okay, look at this chunk of code. It will work the same way, exactly the same way. Why? When the program runs, you set h to 5. You will check, is this true? No, it's false. Ignore. Is this true? No, it's false. Ignore. Is this true? Nope, it's false. Ignore. Is this true? Yes. H is 5. So h is smaller than 7. It's true. I go in, set the cat to kindergarten. I'm going to ignore this. I'm going to come out and print kindergarten. So there's no need for you to check. What I'm trying to say is that for this case, there's no need for you to check if h is bigger or equivalent to 5. Why? Now the reason is because if h is smaller than 5, you have been caught earlier. You have been caught by this condition. Alright, and the category will have been set to nursery. All the remaining blocks will be ignored and I will jump out of the whole if block. I'll jump out of the whole the second statement. So I say again, there's no need here to check if age is bigger or equivalent to 5 and below 7. Why? Because if the age is smaller than 5, it would have been caught here. It would have been previously caught. Okay, so this works as well, and I'll say it's a bit cleaner because it's a bit simpler to understand. You just know what you are doing. The previous example is not wrong, it's correct. Okay. Another thing I want to say is that here, this part here can be changed as well. It can be changed to else. Okay, there's no need for you to check if age is bigger or equivalent to 7. Because if all the previous conditions have not been met, it is obviously the case that age must be bigger or equivalent to 7. What other values, numeric values, can age store? Okay, in the first place, if age is not storing a numeric value, you have gotten an error because you're trying to compare, for example, a string with using a small than sign. So this is very safe. There's no need for you for all other cases. Remember, this is a command. I've had a command. For all other cases, there's no need for you to put a check here anymore, a condition here anymore. Alright, all other cases simply means age is 7 or older. You save this, you run exactly the same way. Okay, it works. And it's a bit simpler. So, that's all.